what I feel about filmmaking and all sorts of media and everything really is that storytelling is what shifts people's experience and knowledge and opens the heart space. It's not just someone emailing you and trying to put pressure on you.
Welcome to Women We Should Know with international speaker, mindset reset mentor, author, and your host, Lesley Michaels. With audacious honesty and candor, the Women We Should Know podcast presents the wisdom and life-empowering insights of women who are the embodiments of innovation and social evolution. Please join Lesley as she shares potent conversations that will inspire your personal and professional evolutions.
I am always so excited to come back to the podcast, to come back to Women We Should Know, and to have another opportunity to introduce all of you to dynamic women who are making a tremendous difference in the world, each in their own way, each in their own point of focus, but each making a difference that is noticeable and that is admirable. The woman we have with us today is like myself, time-old feminist. And so I am very excited to bring her to speak with you today. Let me give you just a little bit of insight to her first. Barbara Bentree is a multiple award-winning filmmaker and musician who began her career as a professional vocalist. She's worked as a director, writer, producer for live theatrical performances, movies, and television. One of her most notable credits was producing vocal music for the new Mickey Mouse Club television show for the Disney Channel. She's worked with Ryan Gosling, Justin Timberlake, Keri Russell, Britney Spears, Christina Aquilera, and that's just to name a few. Whether she is doing television, live performance, creating documentary, whatever her point of focus, all of Barbara's stories are inspired by her desire to change the conversations around women, animals, and the environment. And regarding Barbara's feminist projects, her film was titled My Choice and was about women who choose not to have children. Watch for this one. She's currently touring national and international film festivals with her feature documentary titled Dave Grusin, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, Not Enough Time, but I will tell you that I watched the YouTube trailer on this. We all want to see this. This looks like a fascinating man, and it appears that Barbara did a wonderful job at putting together a film about him. And so today I am most happy and excited to introduce you to Barbara Bentree.
Thank you very much. What a wonderful introduction. I'm wonderfully happy to be anywhere these days. But especially happy to be on a show about women. I mean, it's just my passion. So
absolutely, and I want to speak about that at some length. Could you tell us one thing about you that's not in your bio that people might find interesting or that you would like for them to know?
I just recently did something to sort of try and figure out my identity. And I see that so much of who I am traces back to my childhood in rural Minnesota, which when I lived there felt like one of the most boring places, rural farm town. And I've only come in the last decade or so to realize that it was an absolutely exquisite childhood. We were free to roam wild. We, were really close to nature. It was a time period where, my mother used to say, get out of the house and come back at 5:00 for dinner. And they had no idea where we were. I was near a river and a woods, and I just feel that I imprinted so deeply on nature and had so much time to myself. We had to make our own fun. And that, I think, is where the imagination comes from that I am working really hard to develop even more. And a lot of the stories that I am working on right now are a reflection of that time period. And I think that it's a core part of me, you know, and in a very specific way, I was a cowgirl. I had horses, but not like fancy ride around the ring horses. Like I rode bareback 90% of the time and just was like a dirty, rowdy. I had a little gang of girlfriends that we all rode horses together, and I shoveled a lot of horse poo, and, you know, I mean, and it just, I think, gave me a grounding in strength.
You and I come from that generation that grew up a lot differently. We grew up in the generation where nobody had a key to their house. If
Right.
somebody needed to lock their house, they would have to go put a new lock on the door because no one even knew where a lock was.
You're right. We didn't have a
Yeah,
lock. You know, doors were open all the time.
all the time. And everyone's in and out. And you never knew when you were going to walk in your house and find some neighbor kid in the refrigerator grabbing a snack.
I mean, I remember laying on the hill in my backyard and watching clouds for a lot of time. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't this.
That's right.
Monarch butterflies spinning their cocoon, and you know, bugs, ant colonies, and squirrels chasing for acorns, and, you know, it was just a different rhythm and a different time, and I treasure it now. I treasure it so deeply, you know.
Indeed. And one thing I treasure is I know generationally there is this tradition of saying, oh, I don't know what the kids are going to do now. Now, you know, they're not walking 10 miles in the snow to go to school the way we all heard that story when we were kids from our grandparents. But what I know to be true and what I've seen to be true and experienced to be true is every generation just has their new way of expression.
That's right.
And so I find this a really stimulating and exciting time on many levels, not the least of which the way the 15 to 30 age group demographic are really rising up to not protest as such in the way we did, but to just live differently instead of making a big to do about it, which we had to break through some ceilings and we had to break through some walls. They're just taking it to the next step, and it's showing up in their creativity. And how do you get to work with some of these younger people and some of these younger creative minds, and how does that affect and impact the way you present your art?
I just feel that the young people today are the result of all that hard work we did in education 20 or 30 years ago. You know, I just feel like they don't care about gay rights. You know, it's like they're just like, what's the big deal? You know, we grew up this way. We grew up seeing our mothers working. We grew up seeing, you know, we've always had friends that were gay or transgender or, you know, other races. And so that is incredibly exciting to me, to see that education really does work. It takes time. I think our world is better for it. And yeah, I have great faith in the future. I'm actually more concerned about older people now that are in the positions of more power, clinging to old ideas, you know, and I think that's our work now, you know.
Right. Because right now, that generation from, 65 to 80 is the largest generation on the planet. I was shocked to learn that. I thought that we as the baby boomers, and I'm at the bottom end of it, but I thought we were the largest generation. Not so.
Interesting. I didn't know
And
that.
yes, and I can look at individuals I know particularly in their mid to late 80s, and it's an entirely different mindset. So thanks for sharing that. Now I want to jump right into your feminism because you're singing my song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sister from a different mother.
That's right.
And that's right. Where was the original seed of feminism planted in you?
I think it was the story I told about the horseback riding. I would hung around with a lot of farmers and other strong girls. I was in sports a lot too as a child. I really enjoyed that. So that was another place where I feel like I think there's something really good about women just feeling physically strong and coordinated and able to take care of yourself. So I think that's part of it. I also, after having done this little film called My Choice and interviewing other women who are feminists, and particularly women who've chosen not to have children, which is another whole subject, we knew really early on.
Mm-hmm.
We knew really early on, which is surprising to me. I knew at 8 or 9 years old, I was not going to have children. I don't even, and my mother would talk to me about it. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And almost to the point where like, I just stopped talking about it because everyone was always trying to convince me that I was wrong in that decision. But I just think that's kind of interesting. Is it something in our DNA? Is it something, is it experiences that we've had? I think, and also just that feeling that I had a lot of time on my own. And I was sort of I think in the old days it was called a tomboy, possibly, which,
Mm-hmm.
what was that about? What was that
What
disparaging
was that?
word?
Yes, there had to be a boy word in there if you were
Yeah.
athletic or if you were self-competent.
Yeah, and I think that it's so sad because there's the flip side for boys too. Boys that were maybe like to dance or do whatever, then they were labeled, and it just keeps everybody in these tiny boxes of discomfort, I feel,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
bad feelings. People teasing you, and
Right.
I just felt like I had to be incredibly defiant a lot as a child, which was probably the bane of my parents' existence. But it was just, once you get a taste of it, you don't want to go back. You know,
Exactly.
the
Exactly. And when we were young and doing these things that all the boys did, the term feminism wasn't originally around. I mean, we
no,
were before that. There were the suffragettes that had come before us. My paternal grandmother was a great suffragette, but we didn't have the term feminist until somewhere in the 60s and then on into the 70s. And I know for myself, I stuck out my thumb and hitchhiked to New York because I was a teenager, and that's how we got around in those days. It was safe to do that because it felt like something I needed to know about. But that was the first time I was cognizant of us having choice about how we were seen and how we were referred to, instead of being a tomboy or any of those really disparaging comments. We got to just be feminists. We got to be women. And what was your kind of awakening moment? Mine was hitchhiking to New York.
mine was going to Europe.
Mm,
I was singing in choirs my whole high school. And again, this tiny little town, but I somehow made the all-state choir, and then I auditioned for this national group. It was like, there's no way I'm getting in this thing. Well, I was selected, and I got to go to Europe for 6 weeks the summer between my junior and senior year of high school. And again, no cell phones. I mean, I just dropped off the face of the earth for my family. I mean, it was like $45 a minute for a phone call or something like that, at
I
that.
remember those days.
So, we had chaperones and all of that, and I was exposed to kids from all over the country, from New York
Mm-hmm.
City, and then just seeing the world, that I had never seen blew my mind. And I came back for my senior year of high school and had a rough time because it was sort of like, oh my God, I got to get out of here.
Right,
I want to go see that.
right.
And it's not like I was some incredible world traveler after that, but it just, the multiculturalism, the different way of living, different priorities in life, I mean, just the arts. And, I came from a town that was really hardworking, a meat packing plant was our main industry, so, and it, lovely people, lovely people. I mean, I'm one of those people, but I wanted more of that. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to know different ways of being. I wanted to talk to people who are not like me. In fact, I think I've sort of always sought them out, you know, people of other cultures, and both of my marriages have been to people that are very unlike me. And that's it. You know, I crave knowing more and of the other, if there is an other. I don't even like to see people as another. We're all one, you know, we're all connected.
Right, right. And Europe's a great place to understand that. My mother's
Yeah.
British, and her siblings still live over there. So we've jumped across the pond many times. That was natural. And I love Europe for all of the reasons that you say. So you went to Europe, your mind was expanded in
Totally.
the way people were different, they live different, they speak differently, they speak about different things in Europe than what we care about over here. And then you came back and went into teaching. Where was the transition where you knew that you had to be a filmmaker?
It's come very recently. I mean, I started teaching in the 80s, and had a really wonderful career for a few years. I taught high school music, choral directing, and then I decided, uh-oh, if I'm ever going to sing and do anything professionally, I better do it now. So I headed to Los Angeles, and I worked for quite a few years as a professional singer. And that was great, but hard, you know.
Yeah.
And then I got married and I went back into teaching, which I had done, you know, and teaching has always been there for me as sort of a backup, you know, and a way to earn a living, but doing wonderful, important work, you know. Well, anyway, I was in Pacific Palisades, California, which is sort of center of the industry. You know, a lot of people from the entertainment industry live there and everything. And I got to be known as working with kids. And so that led to the TV work, you know, the Mickey Mouse Club and things like that. I think that part of the reason I was hired for those jobs is because of my background in education,
Mm.
particularly for Disney. I think they were concerned that the kids would be well taken care of, and they knew that I had that background in addition to my professional background. So that was really a wonderful experience. And being on television sets and movie sets was where I did my research, you know, and kind of thought, oh, I could do that, you know. I mean, and so I came to where I started making little videos in my teaching. I kind of was back and forth. Whenever I wasn't working in television, I was teaching, and I started doing little videos for my students and with my students, little music videos. And then they became longer, and then they became longer, and just sort of naturally fell into making longer pieces. And I think I'm also, you know, still an educator in some ways. I just want a bigger classroom now. I want the world, you know, and I want to tell people about interesting things I've discovered or things I believe or people I've met. There is that educator still in me too. And film is great for that.
Film is great for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Documentaries are a big pastime of mine.
And I
You
think
can
it's so
learn so
beautiful.
much without having to do every single bit of personal research. You can find out what's interesting that you do want to spend time on.
And I've never gone to film school. I mean, that's the beauty of online learning, you know. I taught myself how to edit film, and you can learn anything now. And I think this pandemic is even accelerating it further. I mean, we're realizing how we can have meetings, we can do interviews, we can learn new subjects, we can have conversations with people all over the world. And I don't think we're going back. You know, I think it's making a permanent mark on our society, even though we feel like everything is slowed down and paused. I think in other ways, things have really accelerated because you don't have the excuse of, oh, I can't get there. I don't have the airfare, or I don't have the, you know,
Right.
wherewithal. I can't have the meeting. It's, yes, you can, in your living room.
Yes, I can take that. I can take that class in film editing
Right.
and have dinner at home and walk my dog. And so that's a beautiful thing. And I'm really impressed by the fact that you taught yourself, because I've had the privilege of seeing some of your work. You sent it over to me prior to this podcast, and it's really beautifully and professionally done at a very high level, and beyond telling our audience that, so that they'll know that this is something they want to catch. I'd like to speak about some of your content. I was really moved, deeply moved by the short film you did, where you interviewed women who are now in their 70s, who had illegal abortions back in the day because they knew, for each for their own reason, such as the individual who was using drugs and an alcoholic, they knew each for their own reason that they should not have that child. How has that film, and how have those stories and the deep emotional reveal that comes with that, how is that being received?
Well, that was a very specific project. I'm just so grateful to be a member of National Organization for Women. And the Santa Fe chapter approached me at the time of our legislative session here in New Mexico. There were some important bills in the last, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, that were up for debate and for vote. And they decided that instead of just emailing and calling and everything, that they wanted to do something where they would send something to these legislators that is hearing people's stories. You know, what I feel about filmmaking and all sorts of media and everything really is that storytelling is what shifts people's experience and knowledge and opens the heart space. It's not just someone emailing you and trying to put pressure on you and everything. It's like, no, you need to, especially for men, I think, whether they've held someone's hand who's had an abortion, or they need to hear what kinds of situations women get themselves into. So anyway, we worked on that. They asked me to put this video together, and you know, some brave women, I think there were 5 women who bravely said, I'll tell my story, which just right there is, you know, huge. And that's the other thing, that we were on this mission of like people saying the word abortion and saying that I've had an abortion. And it's just, you know, the shame that is involved in that. But when you hear people's stories and when you hear the kind of situations that they get into, that really necessitates in some ways an abortion for the well-being of everyone, it really shifts your, you know, thoughts about it, I think. And it was, so anyway, yes, it was effective. The bills were passed that needed to be, and declined that needed to be. And I think they're going to use it some more. And I just think anyone telling their story is so powerful. And that was actually very easy as a director. I mean, I edited it and certainly had to piece some things together, but pretty much I just let the camera roll, because, and found myself, I didn't know what their stories were going to be. I sort of had an idea, but my jaw was dropping as much as, you know, everyone on the crew. You know, we were all just kind of going, oh my goodness. And I think the men on our crew, there were some at that time, were also deeply moved by those stories.
The thing I found so impactful for it is something I've known for a long time, but other individuals don't. And that is, you can't stop abortion. Just like you cannot stop prostitution. You cannot stop it. You can make it safe, or you can make it life-threatening, but you can't stop it. I thought you did a beautiful job of, whether it is that you just allowed them to speak and then you edited it beautifully, or whether it is that the questions you were asking behind the camera that we didn't see, help them to reveal that fact, each in their own way and through their own story. These women are revealed that this is not a matter of, are we going to make it legal or not legal? It's a matter of, are we going to make it safe or not safe?
I almost don't like when it becomes it's my body, I can do what I want. And some of those conversations, because for me, it's my destiny and I can do what I want. You know, I mean, it's like, first of all, the circumstances as to how a woman gets into a situation with an unwanted pregnancy are as diverse as, you know,
as women.
Yeah, I mean, circumstances are just unbelievable. The conversation that's missing for me is how it changes a woman's life. Much more than a man's life. Much more than a man's life. Much more than a man will ever know, you know? And I don't feel like anyone has the right to say to another person that because of a failed birth control or domestic abuse or young stupid thought or under the influence of drugs or whatever reason that leads you to having an unwanted pregnancy, that you are then burdened with this destiny for 20 years. Nowadays, I don't know, it's 30 years your kids
I don't know.
And you may not be able to financially take care of them. You may not be able to emotionally take care of them. You may not have any support system. It's like, it's a destiny thing for me that every woman should be in control of their own destiny. And I think the more inaccessible it is, the longer women wait in their angst and everything, and it becomes more of a moral issue, you know?
Right.
One thing that's shocking to me is I saw an episode of a TV show where two young people went out for a date and had a broken condom or something, and they went and got Plan B, and I was just like, whoa, that's like so different than when I grew up, and yet so wonderful. I mean, you know, before it's even an issue, you've taken care of, you've been responsible for taking care of the situation.
That's right. That's right. Kids are growing up faster, which we did as well. We grew up faster than our parents, and they grew up faster than their parents. It's just a natural evolution. And with that, we see them becoming more educated earlier. But the thing I want to speak to is the fact that you did this film for a body of legislature. I have met two women, yourself and another, now in the last 2 weeks, who started their film career by making short films for the purpose of going into courtrooms.
Wow.
For the purpose of being able to illustrate, in the other case, a whole lot of heavy data that would have put everybody to sleep. But when it becomes a film and it becomes animated and there are stories involved and real human beings' lives are being affected, all of a sudden now you have the court's attention. The same with your case. I'm really impressed with the way, and both of you are females, maybe some men out there are doing it too, but I'm really impressed with the way the women I'm meeting are using this as a vehicle to bring broader understanding, which speaks to your point of being an educator, to bring broader understanding into a greater variety of arenas such as court.
Yeah, I think, fortunately or unfortunately, I think people are not reading as much as they used to. And video is becoming the new way to gain knowledge.
That's right.
But it's not all bad, you know. I mean, I'm watching historical pieces that I find to be really educational, you know. I mean, I'd take, for example, the series The Crown or something like that. Now, granted, I know it's a dramatization. I know some of it may or may not be true. But there's also a lot of history in that show that I didn't get when I was studying European history. I didn't certainly get that much detail about the UK, but I'm finding myself wanting to know more, and I'm finding myself watching other shows about that, and the emotion, the music, certainly the costumes, the dialogue, everything makes it so much more powerful than just reading a paragraph in a textbook on European history,
Right.
And I think that's just where we are now, in that, we are demanding or wanting more information, three-dimensional learning almost. It's not three-dimensional. Well, virtual reality will be three-dimensional learning.
Right, that's right.
So that's the next step,
Right.
and it's, when I was ending my career in elementary education, there was this whole examination of cursive writing. Do we need to learn cursive anymore? And there was all of us going, oh, yes, you do. It's good for your brain and all this. Well, maybe we don't, and
Right.
And do we need, yes, of course we need to read, but is reading the place that we're going to get the deepest meaningful information? Now, the other side of it is that media is incredibly powerful in manipulating opinion too. And there needs to be integrity.
Haven't we seen a lot of that this past year?
Goodness gracious,
Right.
I mean, and it's the nature of people who are trying to sell things or
Right.
Propaganda. It goes back to, when video is, propaganda's been there since the beginning. So there has to be media literacy also for young people, and I've taught classes like that, and it's really wonderful to watch kids realize how much they're being manipulated by media. And I think it's important, because you need to know when that person isn't telling you the truth, or the way they've set up the camera, or the way the editing is happening is trying to get a reaction out of you, or a misrepresentation of what they're talking about,
Well, now I've heard the term media literacy, and that makes sense, but I didn't have any awareness that, at least in some states or in some arenas, they are bringing that into the schools. I think that is so vital.
It really is. I think in this day and age, it's essential. And it should be probably hand in hand with kids learning how to make media, because it teaches a sense of ethics.
Speaking to film and documentary as an educational tool, I don't want to let all of our time pass before we speak about your film, My Choice.
Well, it was sort of my first little foray into filmmaking. And I literally just had a friend come over with a video camera. It's an issue that is really important to me. It's a film about women who choose not to have children, of which I am one. And we talked briefly about that, earlier.
Yes, I'm on the list.
And just coincidentally, I have a lot of women friends here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, that share that lifestyle. And so I thought, I'm just going to bring them over and ask them some questions. And I don't know if this is anything. I'm just going to, videotape it, see what happens. And again, it was like halfway through, each person, I was like, oh my goodness, this is really interesting. And I've never seen anything like this before. In fact, probably if I have any regrets, I wish I would have had a better camera. More time and energy into it, because I think it really is a powerful film. It's basically a conversation, 5 women answering questions and telling why they made the choice not to have children and what the consequences have been. And it's not what you think, and I think the thing that's so great about it is that all of our lives as girls, from the time we're grown up till we, are able to have children, it's just this presence, whether it's your girlfriends getting married and having children, or pressure from your parents, when am I going to be a grandparent, or just society, that it makes it look like, falling in love and getting married and having children is just, that's what you do, It gives you tremendous anxiety. You feel abnormal. You feel a lot of mixed emotions, and that's what's in this film, you know. And yet, I also felt like I'm really happy with my decision, and I feel it's worked out really great. And I felt like for all of those hours and hours of time that young girls are being told one thing about having children and doing it like, you know, the traditional way, could you just have 45 minutes for the other side? You know, just
Right.
explore.
Right.
I mean, isn't that the way you should make a choice about anything? I just felt like, okay, I'm going to do this. Well, we've taken it out for a few screenings, and again, sponsored by Santa Fe Now and some other organizations. I have been amazed at the reaction of people in the audience. It's been mainly women in the audience, to be honest, but oh my goodness, people have been in tears. It's hard to stop the conversation, actually. It goes on and it gets so emotional for some people and so angry for some people that they never had this possibility to even think of doing it another way. Regret, women who said, if I had known that there was a choice, maybe I would have been a better mother. Feeling of just, I had to do it whether I wanted to or not, you know.
Right.
Women feeling like they were just on and granted, many people have children. They're completely happy with that decision and everything. And my feeling is more power to them. I've taught elementary. I've probably taught 10,000 kids in the course of my life. And I love children. I just knew that being in the arts, it probably wasn't going to be a real responsible decision, because I knew that my life was going to be very up and down financially and even location wise and everything. And it just felt like, how could I be a good parent in this sort of lifestyle? But I also knew if I didn't pursue that lifestyle, I was going to be a very unhappy person. And I think we've seen many movies and read many stories of women who were not able to actualize themselves as people. And I think that's tragic, you know?
Yes, yes. And there are so many things I like about and appreciate and honor about this film, because you say it's mostly women in the audience. Well, bravo. Bravo that you're getting those large female audiences out there, because what occurred to me is that even if someone has children, or maybe especially if they have children, that it's an important film so that they can be prompted to give 45 minutes to that opposite conversation of, well, maybe you don't want to. We've been speaking periodically today, or in different ways today, about evolution and how generational changes. Am I wrong in guessing that the 18 to 35 group of females now are feeling more freedom to make their own choice? Or is that just wishful thinking on my part?
Well, the statistic is that in the last 40 years, there's been 100% increase in the number of women making that decision. So that says something.
Making the decision to consciously not parent, not have children.
Yeah.
Yes.
It used to be 1 in 10, and now I think it's 1 in 5. Maybe, who knows where, that's a few years ago. I don't know. I keep seeing articles. What I think is fascinating is from other countries. In China, in places where women are starting to say, you know what, I don't think I'm going to have children. And you know what, I might not even get married. I think that's pretty interesting. Yeah.
There's so much more freedom from every direction around these choices of how and when and if to have children.
And I think you and I are the way showers for this new generation. You know, I grew up when the card game Old Maid was popular, and you were a
Yep.
spinster or baron, or, you know, I mean,
Oh, it wasn't that awful.
any more,
Yes, I remember that game. Hadn't thought of that in decades, but
you
it's the
know,
truth.
could you make it? And she was awful looking, you know, she wasn't out there, hey,
That's right.
you
That's
know, I
right.
was like, she was an old, no one likes me, you know, and and I think there are enough people now of our generation who are still vital and doing things. And, you know, I mean, I've come to this filmmaking career relatively late in my life. I mean, full bore. And I think even that is unusual, you know, when most people are retiring and going away. And, you know, I'm kind of feel like I'm just getting started. And I think when you start seeing other people ahead of you who have made those choices and it works out okay,
Hmm.
um, it encourages you to take that risk. And
That's right.
the other thing about it too is that not physically having children does not mean you're not going to have children in your life. Like I said, I've taught 10,000 children. All the people in my, you know, to give away a little inside of the film, you know, what all the women in my film say is, I am like the best aunt. like, like my nieces and nephews love me because I am a confidant, I am a role model, I am a helper. You know,
Hmm.
they help with college educations, they do all sorts of things that are, you know, I think it takes more than two parents now to raise a child. You know, I think it's, we need as many people around young people as possible, giving that wisdom, giving that support, even financially, you know, just so it's, again, as you alluded to earlier, things are changing. And I think in a good way that gives everyone so much more freedom and living their best life, you know.
I'd like to know, as we're getting ready to close down, a couple things. First of all, when and where can the women in our audience see My Choice?
It's a very good question. It kind of went on the back burner when I got involved in these other projects, because I still feel like I need to tweak it professionally. Now that I've kind of evolved as a filmmaker, it's hard for me to watch it because it's at a different level of filmmaking. And I feel with some simple work, I could make it feel a little better to me quality wise. But it's the kind of film that I definitely would like to put out and make available in educational situations. You know, if anyone is interested in showing it to groups of young women, I showed it at a college campus here in Santa Fe, and it was wonderful. The faculty that were there, they brought in several classes. I think it was a freshman orientation group or something, and the faculty, which were of our generation, were all like, "Yay!" You know, and the students were, some were happy and some were very confused. And you know, there's here in New Mexico, there's a lot of pressure for some girls to have children
Yes,
early,
there
and
is.
to keep the family tight and together. And so
It's a cultural matter in New Mexico.
right. And so I had them fill out surveys, but afterwards, and at every screening that we've done and across the board, people are just so, it's everything from thank you, it's incredible. In fact, some of the comments are on our website. If you go to jindojazz.com, there's a page that's all about this film and what people said about it.
Well, thank you for that, Barbara. And for all of you who have been listening and enjoying all of what Barbara has to share. We will have her URL, her contact information in the program notes. Please be sure and check her out. She is doing some amazing things for women, for the planet, and for her own entertainment. So you'll want to know more about that. I truly hope that you have received some nugget, some insight, some little aha moment today as we have been moving through, something that's going to cause you to think a little differently or consider life just a little differently. And as we sign off today, I'd like to remind you, you are smarter and wiser than you know, and nothing is beyond you.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We hope you received inspiration for expanding your own social innovation and influence. Help us inspire others by sharing this episode and leaving your comments over at lesliemichaels.com/podcast. For more tips, insights, and support in creating a fully audacious, professional, and personal lifestyle you love, visit our Women We Should Know community on Facebook.